All right, let's get this show on the road. This is the Humans of Magic, MagicCon, Amsterdam recap. I'm going to break it down into 5 parts. Part 1, why I went to Amsterdam. Part 2, what was the general environment and experience like? Part 3, notable moments. Part 4, memorable conversations. Part 5, takeaways going into future events. In case you're wondering, I'm not that organized. I actually have a notepad with me that details some of the main things I want to discuss. So let's get into part 1, why I went to MagicCon Amsterdam. To put it simply, it's to find my spark, my Planeswalker spark for Magic and for Magic content. This year I've been pretty disconnected from Magic the Gathering as a game. It's really not so much to do with the releases themselves or the cards. I think they're all still very interesting. Rather, it's just a lot of life stuff that has gotten in the way, made it harder for me to find time to play Magic. And also deciding to do a few things, a few semi-competitive pursuits that go beyond playing a card game. Like long distance running. I got hardcore into long distance running this year. I've been logging at least 200 kilometers a month on average. And I ran my second marathon this year. That's my new hobby. And that's been taking up a bunch of time. I started a new job in May, which is taking a lot of time as well. It's a good job. I'll probably say more about it over time as I get more settled in. So there's a lot of reasons why I haven't connected with Magic or played as much Magic as I should have. It's not so much to do with the formats or what's banned, not banned. I always think there are ways to have fun with formats no matter what, and there's always ways to switch between formats. If standard's not interesting, go with legacy. Legacy's not interesting, go with modern. Modern's not interesting, go with cube, go with limited. There's so many ways to play Magic these days, and of course there's also Commander. So that's not as big a deal for me as it may be for others. And I've also been super disconnected physically from the Magic world. This MagicCon is the first MagicCon I've ever been to. The last time I went to a major Magic event was the Grand Prix era, the GP era. Because of the pandemic, because of what happened in China, I basically didn't venture out to the US or to Europe at all for about 3 or 4 years. And that was not easy for my mental. I've talked about that in the past. MagicCon Amsterdam was a way for me to get reconnected with the Magic the Gathering community and see what it's like again. It's also a bit of a starter package for upcoming MagicCons. MagicCon Vegas is happening later this year. I'm tentatively set to go. I got accepted as a creator for that event as well. I think it's going to be off the hook, and Vegas is going to be wild. And so I thought that MagicCon Amsterdam would be a good test, if you will, what it's like to be there at an event as a creator. And kind of a dry run. Although, truth be told, I've heard from others that this MagicCon, because I've not been to the other MagicCons, I've heard from other creators that this MagicCon was actually the best one that Wizards had ever done. Compared to Chicago this year, compared to the ones they had last year. So it was very well orchestrated, very well planned, and I'll get into that later in the recap as well. So part 2, environment and general preparation. There wasn't a heck of a lot. One of the things I just wanted to do at this MagicCon, and I think the reason that it was worth going, was just connecting with folks whom I've interviewed on the show over the years to finally meet some of them face to face. That's kind of what I did. So a week or 2 weeks before the MagicCon, I knew I was going to go. So I started making plans, tentative plans with some friends and people whom I knew that I would see there. And I think this events planning thing is pretty important because people's schedules start to fill up fairly quickly. Flying to Amsterdam from China or from Shanghai, where I am, was a long trip. It was about a 13-hour flight with a layover in between because there were no direct flights to Amsterdam from Shanghai, but rather Beijing. So all in all, it took about 12 hours, 13 hours. I found out later that for a lot of folks going to Amsterdam from the US, the flight time was actually shorter So it definitely took a lot for me to get there. But as I mentioned, this is the first time I've been to Europe at all since pre-pandemic. So it was really nice to be back in Amsterdam. Came at a good time at the end of June. The weather was very nice. Things lined up. The transportation to and from the airport to the hotel that I was staying at near the Amsterdam Convention Center for the MagicCon was also great. The public transportation in general in the city, I tried it a couple times that week. It's really good. It's definitely a green, clean transportation system. Very convenient. Everything's laid out in English, so it's pretty easy to get around or to ask some of the friendly local passerbys what it was like. Also, a city that's very big on cycling, and that looked like a lot of fun too. Although I never had a chance to rent or ride around or cruise around on a bike, but that's something I think makes a lot of sense if you're living in the city or if you're in Amsterdam for a longer stay. I mentioned that I become a pretty dedicated runner this year, so I also had the chance to explore Amsterdam in the wee early mornings through my morning runs. That was a lot of fun. One of the things I like to do to get the lay of the land in terms of the landscape, the cityscape, is to go out for a run. And so that's what I did. I was in Amsterdam for a total of about 5 days. I think I ran 3 of the 5 days. Yeah, that sounds about right. All in all, I logged about 40 kilometers across parks, cities, places around the convention center. So that was a lot of fun. The other thing I should mention in terms of preparation that I was very cognizant of was just keeping keeping my social battery intact. Because I'm very much an introvert. And so my social battery runs out after a few deep conversations or interactions within a given day. After a while, after socializing for a bit, I just feel like I am done for the day. It's time to go back to the hotel. It's time to take it easy and just not talk to anybody. That's just kind of my style and how I'm wired, and I just don't enjoy large social gatherings all that much. I like meaningful one-on-one conversations, which is kind of why I did Humans of Magic in the first place. I'm not the type to overly plan or schedule things in advance with people. I'm not that social person. And I also knew that playing Commander, playing Magic events during the convention, it was going to take energy to do that. So I try to prioritize the gathering or the one-on-one gatherings with folks. I made plans with folks throughout the 3 or 4 days and just kind of focused on that. And once 8 p.m., 9 p.m. rolled around, and there might be a social gathering or something to do, I would just tell myself, I'm pretty much done. I'm all tapped out, pun intended, for the day. It's time to go back to the hotel and to recharge, watch some iPad, do some stuff, and just be by myself. And it worked out really well. I tried not to squeeze out every single minute or waking hour of the convention hanging out with people, even though there were a lot of people around and everyone was super friendly. I just tried to have alone time, just alone time to myself, whether it's for running, it's for sleeping, for resting, for vegging out with the iPad in the hotel room. I just made sure to reserve that time to myself. And I think that was very important and helped make the entire week pretty good. All right, part 3, notable moments. There's definitely going to be a list of folks that I've talked to. That's the part after this. But I would say that some of the highlights or the notable moments of this convention, number 1 was the meet and greet with the fans. So Wizards helped me set up a table for about an hour and a half, and I was just there with some product to give away that Wizards had given me, and just welcoming fans who happened to pass by, having conversations with fans, having conversations sometimes with people who didn't know who I was, and that's totally fine. Just introducing Humans of Magic to them, and just having that kind of interaction was super cool. It's the first time I'd ever been at a Magic Con as a so-called creator. And there was a creator area where all the creators hung out and play Magic with non-creators, other creators, play Commander mostly, just hung out and chat. And I think it was really well done, very well laid out. And that was definitely a highlight, was the meet and greet, just being recognized by certain folks, not only at the meet and greet, but just all weekend, just walking around and being recognized by somebody. It's very surreal because I make no pretensions about the fact that Humans of Magic is a fairly small niche show. It's a niche of a niche. It's a very unmagic podcast. There's really not anything in terms of Commander gameplay or strategy content that gets a lot of mainstream attention. That's kind of the way I've designed it. But it was really cool to get that small recognition from fans and have some chats. I asked a lot of folks what their favorite episode was, and it was really interesting to get all these kinds of different responses, which really showed that the show by design has a kind of range that people are into, because some people really focus on the pro interviews, some on the creator interviews, artist interviews, you name it. I've tried to have a wide multitude of guests over the years, and I thought that it worked out well. It turns out that people tune into specific episodes. I don't think anyone really listens to every single episode unless they're a diehard fan, but it's nice to get people tuning in because they want to learn about the various Humans of Magic that exist, or various players or personalities. That's kind of what the show is about, is to tell their stories. And so that was really cool. In terms of other notable moments, interactions with other creators was also super cool, because as creators, we're often working in isolation, alone. We might be fans or respect each other's work online, but there's not a lot of collabs typically. And it was really nice to sit down and also have meaningful chats with fellow creators, which I'll talk about in the next part, which is a recap of memorable conversations. Oh yeah, I should also say that there was a Humans of Magic panel that I held, which is basically a public talk. I talked about the history of Humans of Magic, why I started doing the podcast, and also just things like what I'm trying to do now with the show, which is trying to highlight the global diversity of the game and the various people that play in it. In other words, trying to highlight Magic as a game that exists outside of the United States, because there's very often an American bias. The game is designed, it's made by folks in the US primarily, but I think that there's so much to this game that I really want to highlight that for people all around the world. So that was what my talk or panel was about. It was called Global Humans of Magic. It was talking about my backstory, but also just the evolution and ethos behind the show. I'm really passionate about highlighting just the global Magic community. And especially for me, living in China now, I'm from Canada, but living in China now, it was really interesting to take advantage of the fact this year that I am in China. I haven't really tapped into that opportunity, but I think there'll be opportunities for me to tell more stories about Magic here, as well as the rest of Asia and Southeast Asia. There is quite a player base here, and stay tuned for that. Last but not least, notable moments, I would say that meeting the social media marketing manager at Wizards, Diana, and the whole Magic team that was supporting the event was super cool. I don't remember the gentleman's last name, but David, who I think is contracted with Wizards to work the creator section, he was helping me with the meet and greet, and he was a great guy. We chatted a little bit, and I also got a chance to know more about his background. And I felt like a lot of the Wizards staff, almost all the Wizards staff that I ran into, I'm sorry I don't remember all the names, I just remember the faces. I think they were all extremely helpful for all the creators, not just for me. And I'm very thankful for that. It made the whole event come together for us creators. All right, part 4, memorable conversations. There's a whole bunch, and I won't go deep into some of the conversations because there is a kind of privacy element. You know, there's a lot of just one-on-one talk, but there were a whole bunch of folks whom I am so happy to have finally met face to face, or maybe I met them 6 or 7 years ago before the pandemic, and I finally had a chance to meet with them again. So that was super cool. First person, Justine Jones. the Magic the Gathering artist who's really making a name for herself, really coming up in the Magic and D&D illustration world. And it was great finally getting a chance to meet her because I interviewed her for Humans of Magic. We kept in touch over the past year since the interview. And it was really nice to catch her the day before the Magic Con started because she had a dedicated artist booth and was signing and selling cards and altars and proofs all weekend. So it's very hard to talk to artists for a long time because they have work to do. They're arguably busier than the creators at the event because they're just nonstop, just servicing the fans. And I met Justine, also met her agent, Donnie Cultrider, at one of the nearby hotels the night before. It was really nice getting to chat with her and just catching up and all that kind of thing. Also, I'll talk about a fabulous duo that I met together. Will Hall from the UK and Matej Z, aka Big Z from Slovakia. There are two people that I met for the first time, but I've been friendly with Will online for a while. And Matej, I met him previously before the pandemic when it was the first wave of Pro Tours before the Mythic Championships came into effect. And I met him again and it was great. Matej was working the coverage section this time, so I wanted to catch him before the event started because he would be less busy. So I met up with Matej and Will together and had a very lovely dinner. It was actually hosted by a local friend of mine in Amsterdam, whom I also invited. We just did a group thing together, and it was great. It was local Dutch cuisine. It was fantastic. We had a few beers, had a few laughs, and that was awesome. Also, this is kind of a flashback moment, not with this person, but I remember I used to meet folks at Pro Tours and Grand Prix, GPs, and stuff like that, and just basically proposition them to do a Humans of Magic with me. I still remember talking to some folks back in the day. I got a chance to tell them who I was, and then we would follow up and we do a recording afterwards. This time, I caught up with someone whom I did a recording for Humans of Magic previously, but it was an audio-only recording before I got on YouTube, and that was the fabulous ZBexx. I met ZBexx and her partner and chatted with her, and we decided to just do another taping or recording Humans of Magic, this time with video, this time at the convention center. So it was super cool to talk to somebody, meet somebody that I had met online, and just figure out how to do another interview together. And we just did it. That interview is out with ZBexx, and ZBexx is great. Really enjoyed talking to her and catching up with her. Another person on the list I really enjoyed chatting with, and I spent 2 hours alone with him over breakfast on Friday morning before Game Nights Live and all the amazing stuff coming out of the MagicCon was Josh Lee Kwai. Josh and I have been friendly with each other for maybe about a year and a half, 2 years. I interviewed him for Humans of Magic some time ago. We kept in touch. I visited him and the rest of the Command Zone crew in Los Angeles over a year ago. Remember what I said earlier about just not wanting to be caught up in huge gatherings? I knew I could catch Josh and other folks from game nights at obviously Game Nights Live, but they had a show to do. And so it was really nice to meet Josh outside of the spectacle of the MagicCon and game nights and just kind of catch up. We just talked about how we were doing, some of the challenges and tribulations that we've had with Magic and non-Magic stuff over the past year. And yeah, it was amazing. Easily one of the highlights of my entire weekend. And I didn't even do that at the convention center. I just went to the hotel that Josh was staying at, and we had breakfast for 2 hours and just chatted over food and coffee. It was great. Another person whom I have a ton of respect for, finally had time to chat with them during the MagicCon, was Spice 8 Rack. Spice 8 Rack, the Magic YouTuber. I'd already done 2 podcasts with him. The latest one is a little bit incendiary, was a little controversial, but I felt really important. I felt it was really important to have that message. So it was great to finally meet Spice 8 Rack and also their friend who traveled also from the UK to the MagicCon. And I'm deeply sorry, I don't remember the friend's name, but he was super nice. They didn't actually go to the MagicCon together, but I felt like his friend because they had known each other from way back before Spice became famous as a Magic YouTuber. It was really cool because his friend just hung out with us and acted as kind of a handler of sorts. Like nothing really got out of hand during the MagicCon, and Spice is just amazing. Whenever anyone would approach them, they would just oblige with a photo, an autograph, just all kinds of things. It was great. It was really Spice was really professional. That's how I'll put it. So we had we sat down, broke bread. We had about an hour or so of just eating at the convention center and just having conversation, just catching up. And again, one of the highlights of the week for sure. Okay, so another person that this is more on the pro side, although he's pro/content creator, is Andrea Mengucci, aka Mengu. So I met Mengu. I think he had already been knocked out of the PT, unfortunately. He didn't have a great tournament, but he was playing one of the side events, and I managed to connect with him, hung with him for a little bit, chatted for a little bit between matches of his side event. And it's funny because I'd actually met Mengu before the pandemic when I was working a pro tour as part of Cardboard Live, which was my previous Magic startup company. But Mengu doesn't remember that. He doesn't remember me in that capacity at all, even though I do remember him. And so we kind of joked that this time that, this is our first encounter, even though it isn't really. But regardless, Mengu's super cool, super chill. We talked a bit about what's going on with his life outside of the Magic events and this weekend. Yeah, those are the kind of connections that I think are super cool and just really down to earth. Exactly the same person in real life as in the videos or in Mengu's workshop, his new YouTube channel. Just a lot of fun. And I feel like he's somebody in an alternate reality. If I were a more accomplished pro player or competitive player, I would hope to have become better friends with him. But it's nice to also just to catch these pros at the PT where they're doing their thing. Another pro player whom I also have a ton of respect for, the Hall of Famer, Gabriel Nassif. I had a chance to connect with Gabriel Nassif. Actually, I think we first met at the hotel. So we were both staying at the same hotel. It was the day before the MagicCon. We just randomly ran into each other at the lobby and just chatted. Gab is super generous. He also didn't have a great pro tour. He didn't have a great tournament. But we ended up chatting on Sunday morning, just as he was playing, before he played one of his side events. And that was a great chat that I actually recorded. So by the time you're listening to this, the Gabriel Nassif episode that was recorded at the convention center should already be out. So definitely check that one out if you can. Gab, as always, is amazing. I think I had one podcast with him before. But most importantly, he's given me a lot of support over the years. Like he's helped introduce me to a lot of Magic players whom I've been able to interview because of the Gab Nassif connection. Super awesome. What else? Oh yes, the two legends, the two greatest, arguably greatest players to have ever played Magic the Gathering. I met them this weekend, Budde and Jon Finkel. Pretty amazing. Chatted with him a little bit. Just introduce myself. I'd interviewed them both for Humans of Magic. Definitely go back to those episodes if you haven't listened to it. So it was nice to finally meet face to face after all these years. And also met Jon Finkel's girlfriend, who was super nice and talkative. And we ended up chatting for quite a bit while Kai and John were talking to another fan. And this is definitely one of the highlights of the entire weekend, if not my entire life, was having a group photo with Kai and John. Absolutely amazing. And I'm definitely going to keep that one in my personal Humans of Magic Hall of Fame. Another creator that I connected with, I think we just did a third podcast together for Humans of Magic, if I'm not mistaken. Sam, aka Rhystic Studies. And this was a crazy one because Sam, at the Magic Cons, he's basically a celebrity. He just gets mobbed. So it was really nice that he took about a half hour out of his busy schedule being mobbed by fans. We found a fairly private place to just shoot the shit for about half an hour, just catch up. Good to finally meet him. It was a long time coming. I've always had huge respect for his work. And I think Rhystic Studies is one of the reasons why I'm still involved in Magic, because the storytelling in the essays, the video essays, is so good. There's not too much about that conversation that I want to reveal, but it's just Sam is an awesome person. And I'm just so happy for him and his fiance and where he's going in terms of his Magic trajectory. And I really hope that I can catch up with him again in one of the future MagicCons. Lastly, I want to talk about a memorable encounter that didn't happen. That was with the incredible Reid Duke. What happened was Friday morning, this is day one of the PT. I'm staying at my hotel. I finished my run. I just got back into the hotel, just ordered some coffee and water so I could cool down. And in the corner of my eye, I see Reid Duke sitting at the bar alone. So it was a separate section from the rest of the folks who were having breakfast. And it was clear that he was focused and locked in on finalizing his deck list and just going through some mental stuff before the Pro Tour began. I really, really wanted to approach him and just say hi and, just finally get a chance to say hi to someone whom I've interviewed for Humans of Magic and have been friendly with over the years. And Reid has been super supportive of my project all these years. I want to say all these things to him, but I ended up not approaching him because I just thought that for these pro players, they're here in Amsterdam for the Pro Tour. They're super locked in. They want to be really focused on the tournament that hasn't happened or is about to happen. And it didn't feel right to kind of disturb him from his deep thinking or train of thought. That's what it looked like. So I basically just left Reid alone. And I just tried to imagine what it would be like to be in his shoes and have people approach him at a time that he really wanted to focus. And I think it would be distracting. And so that's what I did. So hopefully in a future MagicCon, I'll be able to say hi to him. I did see him in the match area, but he was always playing. So it looked like he was always deep in thought or concentration. And by the way, this is also just something that I personally subscribe to, is that you don't want to catch folks when it seems like they're not at their best moment. For example, if it's obvious that they just lost a match at the Pro Tour or they're talking to somebody else, it's probably best not to interject as a fan or as a person during that time. Just wait for a better opportunity. And for me, sometimes, like I said with Reid Duke, if there's no better opportunity, just wait for the next event. I think it's totally fine. It's just having a almost kind of empathy for what people might be going through and just not trying to get them at their possibly worst times. That's something that I personally subscribe to. Okay, now we reach the last part, the takeaways. So what did I take away from this MagicCon? Did I actually find the spark? Was it really worth me going there on my own dime, taking vacation days, paying for the flight, the hotels, all that kind of stuff? Was it really worth it for 5 days in Amsterdam as a creator at MC Amsterdam? I would say in terms of the spark, it was nice to have a gathering. Don't get me wrong. But I feel like to get the full spark back, half of it has to be playing Magic. It's not a community thing. For me, just being from someone who enjoyed competitive Magic over the years and has fallen off from that a little bit, I think the biggest thing is to enjoy Magic because it is the greatest game ever. And I think for me to really get that fire or the spark back, even to do something like a podcast, I need to play more Magic. I think that's pretty clear to me now. And I saw how much fun people were having with Magic, both competitive and casual, despite the specter or the cloud of Nadu hanging over this modern Pro Tour. It was still amazing to see all this incredible high-level Magic being played all weekend by the very best in the world. And I am not amongst the very best in the world, but that is deeply alluring to be in this competitive tournament. And it's honestly made me want to play more Magic, whether it's constructed or limited. The other half of the spark, which is through the community, connection, reconnecting with people, I do think I got that. I do think I got that back. It was super invigorating to talk to all these folks whom I work with over the years for the podcast, interview for the podcast, and also to the fans. I can't discount the fans. They've been great. I talked to so many of them during the MagicCon. It was I'm very grateful for folks tuning in to my show. And also the other creators. The other creators gave me a lot of awesome perspective. There were times last year that I felt lost as a creator. Like I had mentioned, doing this kind of magic content is a pretty solitary activity. It was really nice to talk to all these incredible folks who are at the top of their game, whether it's Rhystic Studies, Spice 8 Rack, ZBexx, Lee Kwai with Game Nights and Command Zone. Just getting that huge dose of inspiration from everybody at the event. That was absolutely invigorating. And it definitely brought some of the spark back. But the other half of the spark has to be from enjoying the game of Magic the Gathering. I also really liked what I did in terms of energy management, just trying not to drain my social battery to completely empty every day, just having selected conversations with folks. I might have gone a little overboard with that because I also chose not to play Magic events or pick up Commander games. I think I'm going to change that for future Magic Cons. I want to play some Magic during these events, during this weekend of Magic Cons. But for the most part, I'm very happy with taking a more conservative approach when it came to my first Magic Con. So that's pretty much it. That's the recap. Overall, I just have to end this by saying thank you for tuning into this. Thank you for being a fan of Humans of Magic. Thank you for your support over the years. I am going to do my best to be at MagicCon Vegas this year in October, and I hope to see you there. And if you see me there, if you see me walking the halls or hanging out or doing something, please stop me and say hi. I would love to hear from you. And also, lesson learned, I am going to have tokens or counters or Humans of Magic merch next time. I felt incredibly empty-handed that I didn't have anything to give away or to sell. I think the new Humans of Magic logo is pretty cool. I'm biased, but I really enjoyed the logo. I commissioned it from an actual illustrator, and he did an incredible job. And I think the logo would look great on a playmat, as a sticker, on a shirt, whatever it is. And I would love to spread the word of my logo and the project. So stay tuned. I hope to see you at a future Magic Con. Take care and be well.